So negative space is an element that's long been associated with premium or luxury brands. But how have these clean, clear, minimalist, spacious designs and styles become linked to luxury? Well, could it be to do with modern life? That living in a cramped, busy, perhaps messy apartment is the opposite to living somewhere that you have space to spare? Could having spare space be seen as a kind of luxury? Or could it be the difference between riding in a spacious luxury car versus cramming into a crowded train carriage? Well, if anybody out there knows the reason for this for sure, I'd love to learn more about it. But one thing's for certain, a generous and deliberate use of space has become intrinsically linked with luxury. So how does this translate into identity design? Well, you could certainly instruct your client to try to use generous amounts of negative space wherever they display their logo. But to really tap into this most effectively, it's likely something that will come into play when you're later composing the various elements of a brand identity system. So we'll touch on this later in a little more detail, how exactly we bring that identity system together. But really, whether it's a website, some business stationery, packaging, whatever the case may be, allowing plenty of negative space rather than cramming the elements or the information in really lends to a design piece having a luxurious feel. And to illustrate this, if you think of a Chinese takeaway menu, where almost every item on that menu is usually crammed into as small a space as it can physically fit, and you contrast that with the kind of menu you'd expect to receive at a high-end a French restaurant, well, they're worlds apart. They're complete opposites. And the high-end menu tends to allow as much space as needed to almost give more prominence, a sense of importance to the menu and the items on the menu they're presenting. So try to bear that principle in mind as you're designing elements that contribute to the overall brand identity, and certainly when you're designing the items that are part of a brand's collateral. You could provide suggestions to your client in the brand guidelines you present, but really the best way will be for you to design a number of these items yourself and give your client a good example of a way this should look and the impact negative space can make.